This is the A to Z podcast. Expert insights on leadership, business, real estate, investing, and growth.
Emotional has been a mainstream concept since the mid 90s. Before that, yes, it was there, but only few institutions like universities that had been researching and also using emotional intelligence for their own consumption. Companies and corporations and other institutions, they start to use emotional intelligence to improve performance since the publication of Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. Published the book in 1995, I guess, in the middle of the 90s. Since then, we start to have these manual assessments, paper based assessments for emotional intelligence, and then online assessment. I have taken the assessment a couple of times. And also, I am a certified emotional intelligence learning professional, which means I coach and facilitate workshops based on emotional intelligence assessment. I remember I went to Canada to take that certification. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you some of the misconceptions and myth about emotional intelligence. Whether you are an experienced leader, knows about emotional intelligence, or you may be new. I know you heard about emotional intelligence, but I think you're going to get a couple of things out of this session. I want to start first with the most important misconception I want to make clear, which is about when it comes to emotional intelligence, a lot of people think it's about my emotional intelligence ability to regulate other people's emotions. Yes. At the end of the day, we want to increase our emotional intelligence and be able to regulate other people's emotions. Let's say that your team or someone is agitated, they have this unproductive emotion. If you have high emotional intelligence, you could be able to regulate that and you may calm them down. Great. But the most important aspect of emotional intelligence starts with you, within you, which basically means if you want to succeed as a leader, you have to have emotional intelligence. There was a saying in the past, they hire you for IQ. Now, even if they hire you for IQ, they may fire you for the lack of emotional intelligence, EQ. And the starting place is self emotional awareness and self emotion management, which means you need to know your dominant emotions. I have a different emotional profile than somebody else. From I'm different in terms of emotional profile with a soldier, for example, or a doctor, or a pilot, or a nurse. We all have our own emotional profile. There are some emotions that frequently visit us, and there are emotions that we control better. And first of all, we need to know that profile. What kind of emotions visit me consistently? How are they impacting me? How can I regulate these emotions? You need to come up with some strategy and so on. You most probably remember this. Will Smith, he was sitting in the hall hearing Chris Rock making joke about his wife. Will Smith, he lost his cool. He walked directly on the stage. Thousands of people in the hall, millions of people watching live. He smashed Chris Rock. From Will Smith's perspective, I don't want to make any judgment. I don't know what I would do if I were in his position, but at least he had a couple of chances after that episode. For example, he could have addressed and apologized to Chris and the audience when he was receiving his award. He could have apologized the next day. No, it took him, I think, weeks, a month to straighten up that. Now, from Chris Rock's perspective, he couldn't be able to manage the emotions of Will Smith. He couldn't be able to lower the temperature and he was smacked. That's unfortunate. But at least Chris Rock controlled his emotions. If he reacted emotionally, if he said something emotionally or did something that he regretted, the situation would have become totally, totally banana. It would have been out of control. It would have been a huge damage for the event and also Chris Rock himself. At least he managed his own emotions. He didn't say anything or did something that he would have regretted. The point I'm making is the idea of emotional intelligence starts with knowing the emotions of others and regulating is a myth. It starts first with you. If you control your own emotions, at least you could avoid so many issues and problems, and you could become a good addition to your team and your society. And of course, you need to work on being aware of the emotions of others and regulating. The second myth is about you having your trying to order which one should be the first, which one should be the second one. But I think I want to go for this one, which is about mumming your emotions. I think it should be the second myth. A lot of people, when they think about emotional intelligence, they think it's about mumming your emotions, which is you are affected, there are emotions running in you, and you mum them. I can give you a couple of scenarios where mumming is not really a good response. Overall, emotional intelligence is not about mumming our emotions. Let's say you are a leader, you are in a meeting. Someone said a disrespectful thing against another team member. You are a leader. What would you do? Most probably you are irritated, angered. What would you do? You mum it and you will say, I will talk to this person after the meeting. That could be one solution. But I don't think you are setting a good example. First of all, you are a leader. You don't want to be a pushover. You have to be assertive. Somebody broke one of the protocols or one of your values, disrespected one of your values, and you need to stand up to your values, first of all. Second of all, there are people watching you, watching that person, and they are learning something. It could be a bad lesson, which means I can say whatever I want. Easy, he doesn't do anything about it. I remember when I was working in a software company, I was a software engineer, and I was promoted to lead like 5, 6 people. In the meeting, I was new. In the meeting, I thought I was managing very well. It was a long time ago. My boss one time he said, "Let me come to your meeting. Just don't pay attention to me. Just consider me as a fly on the wall, and I will work on my laptop." He came in. He said hi to everybody. Hey guys, don't mind me. And he was working on his laptop. I didn't know what was going on. I kept on running the meeting. After the meeting, he called me to his office. It was not our regular one-on-one. He called me to his office and he asked me, Izzy, how did it go? I said, well, well, sure. I said, yeah. Let me ask you. I saw so and so, he was saying these things, and You didn't respond. You didn't say anything. I say, yeah, yeah, I remember that. He's always like that. I'm going to talk to him after the meeting to straighten things up. And he stopped me on my truck and he said, Daisy, no, 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 no. Even if you talk to him after the class, the other team members don't know what happened. They think that you are okay with that. You are losing control. You're not in charge. You have to stand up and make sure that you assert in that kind of situation. It was inappropriate for him to take in charge of the meeting and disrupting conversations. That was a big lesson for me. Since then, even if I don't like it, if somebody says in front of me, especially if other people are involved, I have to say something. For example, you are in a meeting, somebody says something offensive. You could at least say, hey, Chris, this is not acceptable in this team. That's it. And then you can talk to that person afterward. At least in the meeting, you didn't completely mum your emotions and what you felt. You felt that was disrespectful, and you said it uh, respectfully. You didn't belittle that person. You didn't say any unprofessional things. You could wait, but you could say, Chris, this is not acceptable in our team. Something like that. The third thing that I want to talk to you about is the aspect of emotional intelligence. A lot of people misunderstand it. It's about empathy. When I talk to people, the way they understand empathy means placing yourself in others person shoe, which means putting yourself in that person's situation. Yes, but in the workplace, what does that mean? I remember one time someone sent me a short video clip by Damien John, and he sent me the link. I watched it, and I didn't understand what kind of lessons he wanted me to learn. So I called him. Hey, I got your link, the video. I watched it. Very interesting. Would you please share with me what was in your mind when you sent that video? He told me, no, Izzy, you need to understand how empathy works. And he said that Damien John, he had this lady who was a high performer when she was okay. She was hardworking. She was going the extra mile. And one time she had a sickness. I forgot the story. It was some years back. Sickness, or somebody died from her family or something. And Damien remembered how hard she was working, and he gave her a lot of room. He took care of her, and he talked about how he showed empathy. And then I asked him this. So you think, because we are very, very frank when we discuss, so you think I need to develop some empathy? Remember, I already have certification in emotional intelligence. I understand empathy, everything. So I want to have this conversation with him, and I want to be frank. Somebody doesn't send you something if they don't have something in their mind. And because of my follow-up questions, he told me, yeah, I don't think you have empathy. And then I asked him, why do you think that? And there was an episode he remembered, and he gave me that episode. In that episode, our conversation was, we were leading a couple of volunteers, and we developed proposal, and they agreed they're going to take that proposal and they're going to raise capital and pay their own expenses. And we want to challenge them. They are young people, and we want them to self-sustain themselves. That was the thing we want to build in them. And then I was waiting. They don't take any action. They already have the proposal. They were not going out, raising the capital, nor doing anything. So I first, because he was responsible to handle them, and I say, well, where are we? Yeah, these are young people. It's hard for them to go out. And I told him, you know what? When I was young, when I was in college, Man, I was meeting ministers. I was the president of the student union of Addis Ababa University. I was going out and making so many moves. And I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a team, and I didn't have like a proposal or something that I go by. I did all that by myself. And then I told him, I don't ask anyone which I didn't do before or willing to do now. And we gave them enough support, and we are here. The least I expect from them is to make some move. They're not using that proposal to raise capital. If they failed, if they got pushed back, well, I show empathy. They tried their best. Let's sit down. Let's regroup. And I talked about Jones's situation. I told him, this lady, she's not someone on the road he just picked up and showed empathy. This is not a lady who just joined his company and he's giving her a break. This was someone who was a high performer, committed, and when she couldn't be able to be at her best, he didn't expect her to do the same thing that she used to, and therefore he gave her a break. The point I'm making here is this: especially when you are responsible for a team and organization, the team and the organization must eat, otherwise it dies. And you have to make people accountable while showing empathy. That's why some leaders struggle. You have to keep the balance. Yes, you have to show empathy, which basically means you understand from where people are coming from, and therefore you don't make judgments, and also you give them some rule. If necessary, you regroup and you strategize to come up with some of the challenges that they have. But at the end of the day, the work must be done. If not by them, by somebody else. And there should be a serious conversation. What I'm saying is that because empathy is important in the workplace, it should not be in the expense of performance, in the expense of the greater good. There should be a balance. I hope I shared with you these three misconceptions and myths that a lot of people misunderstand and affecting them to leverage emotional intelligence. In conclusion, if you are hired because you're great in your technical skills, your IQ, you may be fired, you may be demoted, you may not advance if you don't have emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence begins with self more than anything else. And you need to understand the most dominant emotions in you, and you should know how to regulate yourself so that you don't say or do something that you regret. You find a way to manage your emotions. And of course, emotional intelligence doesn't grow right away. You have to build it brick by brick, one day at a time. And of course, emotional intelligence doesn't mean you mute and mum your emotions, especially if you are a leader. You have to express it. And I'll give you this additional tip from my story before I close. I was expecting someone to come live with me, and I sent calendar. This person accepted that invitation, and I was expecting both of us to go live. People are expecting us. And early morning, I text that person. I say that look forward to seeing you. He said yes. But before the session, he had some kind of reservation. This program was in English, but he wanted to do it with his native language. And somehow I explained to him the majority of the audience and the panelists are English speakers. Somehow finally he said, okay, okay. And even the same day when I text him, he appeared to be coming. The time approached. I was worried. I called him. He picked up the phone, and as if nothing happened, hey, Izzy, how are you? We've been waiting for you. Yeah, I couldn't be able to come. This happened, that happened. And the voice told me that he didn't think he offended me and my audience. He didn't think that I gave my word. I told the audience he was coming, and it didn't bother him from the voice, and that bothered me. I didn't let that go. What did I do was, do you understand how this impacted me and my audience? I gave my word, and last minute you're telling me that you're not here. He said, we can do it another time. No, 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 no. Let me tell you this. If I were you, at least I would have called ahead of time and warn you that I may not be there, so that you have enough time to make sure that you find a solution to this situation. And I was expecting you at least to notify me if you have anything urgent. And I don't judge you. I would have done the same thing in your situation. I'm not judging you, but at least you should have let me know ahead of time. At least you should have called and warned me. Now, I could have said, "Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I will do it." And then I'm sure I'm gonna be fussing about it. I'm gonna resent it, and it affects our relationship. But without disrespecting him, without making any judgment, I told him right there that this is how I felt. This is what I expected from you. Okay, cancel that, but this was my expectation. I'm sure he got lesson. He may not like it, but at least he got lesson. The point I'm telling you is, when you are saddened, disappointed, frustrated, even angry, it doesn't mean you have to mum it, but you need to know how to express that intelligently so that you're not damaging relationships. You're not losing your cool. Finally, we talked about how we have to handle the balance between empathy and productivity and accountability. Until I see you another time, have a wonderful time. If you have a team, an organization, if you want to take the emotional assessment and me helping you debrief the result of the assessment, or even facilitate a workshop based on emotional intelligence, please reach out. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.